Welcome to Public Enemy Number 1, the police whistleblower. It's now 2026, and a lot has changed. So it's time to update the podcast with Season 3, Episode 1. If you've listened to all my other podcast episodes, you'll know that this battle initially started by my speaking out at my police service, the Waterloo Regional Police Service, in 2016. I resigned in 2017, but faced retaliation as early as 6 months after resigning. The ongoing legal battle with the police service began when I tried to hold them accountable for alleged breaches of the resignation agreement in 2018. That lawsuit was eventually stayed by the Court of Appeal until I have exhausted my remedies at labor arbitration and at the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. What complicates this matter more is that the police service brought a case against me at the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario 50 days after I filed my lawsuit, and they're alleging that everything I did since the day I resigned was a violation of my resignation agreement. Now, I am still bound to the terms of that agreement, but seeing as how there are now 16 published legal decisions in these matters, many of the details of the resignation agreement, specifically the existence of the agreement, are out there in the public realm. This is no longer an issue of whether or not the police service violated a legal contract. This issue now goes way beyond just what happened between myself and the Waterloo Regional Police Service. We have a police service using public funds proceeding at the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario with an application that they know themselves violates the agreement. To me, this is a level of deliberate unlawfulness that must be addressed by the tribunal or courts, and I will not give up until that happens. As mentioned quite a few times throughout this podcast, in 2020, I first published my second book, Police Line Do Not Cross: Silencing a Canadian Police Whistleblower. Well, I have since taken that book down from Amazon, and I'm not selling it anymore, and that's because there will be a new book, book number 3, that covers my entire ordeal. I have always believed that these issues are matters of public interest, and I will fight that until the very end. If anyone tries to hold me accountable for publishing book number 3, I will finally take this back to Superior Court to get a ruling that our Courts of Justice Act, Section 137.1, should apply to tribunal lawsuits as well as lawsuits filed in court. I welcome the opportunity to make history. But while we wait for the release of book 3, I'd like to go back and just explain how outrageous it is that it is 2026 and the application filed by the police service in 2018 still exists. I've had many conversations with people that understand the processes at the Human Rights Tribunal, and I keep being asked, why didn't you just file a notice of intent to dismiss? Why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that? And this episode, I hope to dispel some of these myths of things that have not been done over the years. I can tell you with my hand on my heart that I have done absolutely everything to have the police services application dismissed, and yet it still exists 8 years later in 2026. We have recently made all of our final submissions to the tribunal, and we have been told that a final hearing will proceed in these matters. Ahead of that, I want to educate the public on what has happened to date. In June of 2018, the police service first brought their application against me. I knew right away that they should not have been allowed to do so, and I filed a Form 19 in response to their application, alleging that their application was an abuse of process, that the tribunal did not have jurisdiction to hear it, and that it should be dismissed. The tribunal did not address that submission. So what I did in the fall of 2018 was I filed an application in Superior Court asking the court to dismiss the application pursuant to Courts of Justice Act Section 137.1, which is Ontario's anti-SLAPP law. The anti-SLAPP law says that if a lawsuit is brought to limit debate on matters of public interest, the lawsuit can be dismissed preliminarily. Since no one had tried to do this before, there was some confusion around how this should be handled. In the end, there was a chamber meeting to discuss the jurisdiction of court to hear such a request, and Justice Favreau ruled that the Superior Court does not have jurisdiction to dismiss a tribunal lawsuit. In hindsight, I can see that that decision would have been a powerful one to appeal, but if you put yourself in my shoes as a non-lawyer dealing with all of this brought on me in 2018, I didn't have the time or energy or knowledge to do it at that time. So their case against me proceeded. In 2020, I filed a Form 10, a formal request for order during proceeding, to have their case dismissed for all the same reasons I had cited in 2018. This time, I provided evidence to the tribunal to prove that there was nothing in the resignation agreement that prevented any of the allegations stated by the police service in their application. This request also was not addressed by the tribunal. Now, fast forward to 2022, and the tribunal did hold a preliminary hearing into these matters, although they still were not willing to hear my multiple requests to dismiss. So at this preliminary hearing, my application was put under the microscope and reduced to one allegation of contravention of settlement. The police services application was not criticized at all, and my requests were not even addressed at the hearing. As you would imagine, I appealed that request, hoping to force the hand of the tribunal to finally hear my multiple requests to dismiss the police services case. Well, even our divisional court agreed with the tribunal and essentially said that the tribunal can follow whatever process it chooses, and if it chooses not to hear my request to dismiss, that is their decision. So I was told to be patient and wait until the tribunal chose to address the matter. In the meantime, the police service retained a new law firm, Learners, in Toronto, Ontario. At the point in time when they changed representatives, they had spent close to $800,000 in legal fees. There was a brief moment that I thought maybe a new, fresh set of eyes looking at this case would see things differently, but it didn't take long to find out that would not be the case. We received notification in late 2025 from the tribunal asking for us to make submissions on outstanding issues. The police service tried to say that removing Brian Larkin as a personal respondent was an outstanding issue, but thankfully the tribunal acknowledged that the issue had not previously been raised. Of course, I raised my multiple requests to dismiss and how they had never been addressed. The adjudicator published an interim decision in January of 2026, denying the 2022 request to amend by the police service and stating that it would not be removing Brian Larkin as a personal respondent until the proper forms were submitted to the tribunal. It gave me some hope to know that this adjudicator was willing to critically look at the actions of the police service and not allow them to sneak something in after the fact. Along with this interim decision, the adjudicator posted a case assessment direction. As I was saying, we were directed to resubmit essentially every document we were going to rely on that had been submitted over the past 8 years and prepare case summaries and witness lists. This is the moment I had been waiting for 8 years, so I was happy to see some progress, although I still didn't really know the timeline moving forward. So if you've listened to the entire podcast series and you know what has happened in the past, this is where things are at today. So the amendment that the police service filed in December of 2022 has been denied. They will not be allowed to add all of their allegations stemming from 2018 to 2022. This was them doubling down in 2022 instead of withdrawing their application altogether. It was their actions that pushed me to a very, very dark place in January of 2023. So needless to say, I was happy that their amendment was not allowed, since I was questioning the legality of their case from the very beginning. As of March 12th, all of the final documents have been put before the tribunal ahead of a final hearing or another procedural step to be determined by the adjudicator. My life is now in their hands. That's a scary place to be for anyone that understands how the tribunal operates. If you're on my mailing list, you'll know that this legal battle has evolved. Regardless of what happens with these Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario applications, I'll be pursuing my interests in Superior Court once this proceeding concludes. I'm now alleging that the police service negligently misrepresented my resignation agreement to me. I relied on the misrepresentations given to me, and I resigned from a career that could have lasted another 24 years. My speaking out in 2016 did not warrant a decade of retaliation, and I wanted the world to know the treatment I've sustained. I have a section on my website titled Complaints, and I post all the complaints there that I've made and the results that I've received. You'll see that in 2022, I made a complaint to the Ontario Civilian Police Commission about the misuse of public funds in my matter. I explained to this oversight body that the police service knew there were no legal grounds for their application in 2018, yet they've been pursuing it since that date at an exorbitant cost to the public. The commission conducted a preliminary review of my complaint, but then dismissed it without an investigation. So I filed a Freedom of Information request to obtain the entire file. That request was denied, and I appealed it to the Information Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. In the fall of 2025, I was informed that I would be receiving a large portion of those records. There were 2 records that the Commission had outright refused to disclose, but the Privacy Commissioner ordered them to re-exercise their discretion in choosing not to disclose those records. This confused me at first, but what I understood was that the Privacy Commissioner was telling the Commission that they believed parts of the records should be disclosed with redactions. And it was like they were leaving it up to the Commission to have another look at it and decide what parts of the records could be disclosed. Well, in the end, the Commission decided they would not disclose any of the records, and a new adjudicator would decide what, if anything, of those records would be disclosed to me. And this would happen around May of 2026, which I'm still waiting for. In the meantime, our Premier, Doug Ford, is trying to scale back freedom of information legislation to shield certain government entities. So in the end, I may not receive these records at all. The interesting things I wanted to touch on are that in December of 2025, the new police services lawyer submitted that they were only interested in proceeding with what they feel are the most serious allegations. If you recall, they had originally alleged that when I did any public speaking, I was complaining, and that complaints are prohibited by the resignation agreement. Well, now they were saying that they only wanted to proceed with their allegations that I breached the confidentiality term in the agreement. And this is all despite their November 2019 submission stating that there is no general non-disclosure clause in the agreement, but that I had violated the inherent purpose of the agreement. So as you can see, we're walking in circles here. I'm still not sure what is alleged that breached the agreement. I hope you'll stay tuned and follow along with my journey as things just keep getting more and more ridiculous. But as we go along, I'm continuing to obtain the cost spent on these proceedings. And at this point in time, my last request was filed up until November of 2025, and the total was now over $816,000 of public money spent on the legal fees by the Waterloo Regional Police Service. Now, maybe you think that's a good use of policing resources, but if you disagree, continue to follow along, and if you haven't yet done so, please join my mailing list on policeversuswhistleblower.ca to be kept up to date on next steps determined by the tribunal. As always, I thank and appreciate every one of my supporters so much, and I hope you'll stay tuned for episode 2 of season 3. Thanks for listening.